Wow, it's quieted right down, and I haven't even asked it to quiet down. Yeah.
They're ready.
Yeah, I guess. You both know where Stephanie's in this room. Yeah. You all ready to go?
Sure.
All right, I think we have most everybody here. So first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody. This we didn't really know what kind of crowd to expect, so this is great. There's a lot of people here, and we thank you all for joining us. I'd like to begin with a couple introductions. First of all, I'm Craig Weaver. I'm Kiawah Island's mayor. And sitting way down there at the other end of the podium is Ron Ciancio, who is the mayor of Seabrook Island and is my co-host for this event. I want to welcome our two Republican candidates for the Charleston County Council seat representing District 9. Now, Kiawah and Seabrook make up an important part of this district, but it includes not only Kiawah and Seabrook, but it also includes Folly Beach. It includes parts of Johns and James Island. So we are one of a number of different parts of this district. Let me first introduce the candidates. Let me introduce first Joe Qualey. Joe is the incumbent and is currently serving the second Joe of a four-year term.
Correct.
So he was first elected in 2010. And then let me also introduce Jenny Costa Honeycutt, who is challenging Joe in the upcoming primary. Both candidates are going to have the opportunity here in a few minutes to tell you more about their background. I think most of you are aware of this, but just in case, there is not a Democratic Party challenger in this year's election, and therefore there is not a Democratic primary. So if anybody's asking why do we have the Republican candidates, there are not any Democratic. We've compiled about a dozen questions for the candidates. We've gotten input from our residents here in Kiawah and also on Seabrook. And they're questions that we think address issues of both interest and importance to our residents. We're going to try to limit the length of this entire formal part of the program to 1 hour. Because I've sat and where you're sitting, and after about an hour or so, it's kind of time to wrap up. So we promise about an hour. To get that done, we are also going to ask the two candidates to limit their answers, except for the very first one. We're going to ask them to limit their answers to about 3 minutes. I don't have any mechanism to enforce that, but Stephanie Braswell's sitting in the front row with a card, and it has a very mean-looking stop on the front. So we are going to ask them to limit their questions. Both of them will be available for about a half hour after we finish. So we ask you to stay around and visit with them, especially since we're not going to be taking questions from the audience, but we have tried to get your questions in the last couple of weeks. So especially if you've got a question that's important to you and you don't hear it asked over the next hour, then certainly both candidates will be available here to visit with you once this formal part is done. Our goal here is a pretty simple one. We want to give you an opportunity to hear from and be able to evaluate these candidates for a position that very much impacts all of us here in Kiawah and Seabrook. So with no more comments, we're going to move straight into the questions. Ron and I are going to take turns posing the questions. So Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Fine, thank you. I would like to thank both of the candidates for taking time to be here this afternoon, and I would particularly like to thank all of you. This is a wonderful turnout. We can and we will make a difference in the outcome of this election. We're going to start off with having each candidate spend about 5 minutes to introduce themselves and make whatever opening statement they would like. We will start with Joe Qualey as the incumbent.
Thank you. Let me know if these things are not working. I think they are. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joe Qualey. Nice to see you, and I appreciate you all being here. I've got 5 minutes. I'm going to try to basically tell you my life story and less than that. I grew up on the peninsula. I was the youngest of 7 children. I had a great work ethic. I still do. Right now, I'm the can-do, will-do guy. When something comes up, I'm the guy who steps up first. I always have been. Had a morning paper out, got a scholarship from that. It also taught me a lot of good self-discipline. I'm married. My wife is from New Orleans. We have 2 boys. My eldest, Kevin, graduated from Harvard last Thursday, so we're very proud of that. That guy is smarter than me, obviously, and our younger son just finished his first year at the University of Virginia, so we're very proud of these children. Let me tell you a couple things about me as a principled person, as somebody with a moral compass. I've never voted for a tax increase. I've never voted for a millage increase. I voted against our own raises. I'm very keen on sole source bids. I think everything should be open. I think transparency is very important. I'm an independent fiscal conservative. I don't trade votes, and I've never cast a vote to get reelected. That's just not the way it goes. If you've noticed in the paper recently about the Navy Hospital building, which seems to be in the paper almost every day, I was the only person to vote against that deal, the original deal. Out of 9 council people, I voted against it. It has now cost us $33 million. It may cost us up to $100 million, and that was up last night for debate. And I basically said, and I said it again last night, we need to get rid of it. We need to cut our losses and not throw good money after bad. The paper calls me out and says, we should cut our losses. Mr. Qualey is right. We should sell the property. Now, briefly, let me tell you how things work. And let's talk about 526 for about 2 minutes, because that's why a lot of people are here. When I was running 8 years ago, 526 was an issue. And I did then what I do now is I went and talked to the mayors. I talked to the mayors of Kiawah, Seabrook, James Island, Folly Beach, and I said, guys, what do y'all want? Which is the same thing I do now. I called the mayors up and asked them their opinions. That's what happened. Kiawah and Seabrook, actually, they were very passive about it. They were more interested in the Cross Island Expressway, and Townsend knows that. They're like, Joe, because you still have to get to Maybank Highway, which is y'all's problem. So I voted against it. It passed. It went off. At that point, it was gone. It was council directive. It should have gone to Columbia. They should have signed it. They should have started. You don't mess with council directives. So I support the governor's efforts to get the SIB, excuse the pun, off the dime. But we've got a minimum of $420 million at stake. I don't want to lose that money. But listen to this very closely, because this is important. No council person has any influence over this. No council person has had influence over this for the last 7 years. It is at the highest level of our state government. It's in the governor's hands, in Hugh Leatherman's hands. That's where it is. Anybody who thinks that they're going to go to county council and make this happen is not in touch with reality. I've been doing a lot of things while this has been languishing. I'm gonna list those later on. But also a couple of things about me. I don't want offshore drilling of any sort. I supported Folly Beach's plastic and styrofoam ban. I'm working to save Riverland Terrace trees. So I'm a preservationist, I'm a fiscal conservative, I'm the guy that has got things done, and I'll fill you in more after the questions. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jenny Costa Honeycutt, and thank you again for being here today. I appreciate the turnout and the engagement because this is a very important race for Kiawah and Seabrook. I'm a James Island native. I grew up in Parrot Creek, and now am raising my family in the same neighborhood just down the street from where I grew up. In the interim, though, I had an interesting experience and one that gives me a unique perspective on the issues facing the Sea Island communities. And that is, I lived out on Johns Island for about 12 years after law school. And what I saw was the population nearly double with no infrastructure improvements. And that is a failure of leadership. We have got to have people on county council that will advocate for three things, and that is safe roads, smart growth, and sound leadership. In safe roads, my priority is 526. I want to see 526 completed, and there's been a little bit of misinformation going around about that. The idea that county council has had nothing to do with 526 since the 2012 vote is not true. I have the meeting minutes where 526 votes were taken at least 6 times, and Mr. Qualey stood in the way of 526 being completed in all of those votes. Additionally, I do care about the other infrastructure improvements on James Island, and so we'll talk about those today, but the flyover at 17 is important, as well as the Cross Island Parkway and how we address the needs of people once they get on the island and move about, because mobility and safety is a huge issue with respect to the infrastructure improvements that need to be made. On the other hand, there has also been some misinformation about me being bought by developers. That could not be further from the truth. I am for smart growth around this county, but I recognize that people want to live in Charleston, and we will not close our doors to people. And so as people move in, we need to make smart decisions and hold our zoning and permitting authorities responsible for where we put certain boundaries. And I intend to do that if I am on county council. But again, that doesn't mean we close the doors to people or that we limit private property rights in a way that's unfair to what people have purchased when they buy land. And then lastly, sound leadership. And I think this issue of the Naval Hospital is a perfect example. There are 9 council members that serve in Charleston County. Each council member represents a totally different segment of the population. So District 9, as you know, is James Island, Qualey, Kiawah, and Seabrook, and even parts of Johns Island. No other member of county council represents those individuals. In order to get anything done at county council, you have to have the vote of 4 other members. It is not sound leadership if you are the only vote for something or against something that is not right. If you cannot convince 4 other people to vote with you, your leadership is ineffective. And so the fact that there was 1 vote against the Naval Hospital leaves us with a $23 million problem, and then a $33 million purchase after the developer's bankruptcy. And so I believe I bring that consensus building mentality that we can actually get things done for voters, and especially the Sea Island voters who have been neglected over the last 8 years. I'm Jenny Honeycutt, and I look forward to answering additional questions.
All right, thank you. All right, now we're going to turn to some very specific questions. Each candidate's going to have the opportunity to answer the question. And we're going to start off talking a little bit about your priorities. I think the audience would like to have an understanding of what you think is important to the county and what your primary issues are. So what do you see as the most important challenge facing Charleston County? And describe your 1 or 2 major priorities that would be your priorities as a county council member. And Jenny, you're first on this one.
Great. So as I mentioned, and this will be a recurring theme, it's safe roads, smart growth, and sound leadership. Safe roads means our priority is making sure that the residents of the county can get around from place to place to do business and to pick up their children from school, and so that their quality of life is not diminished because they can't get from point A to point B. And likewise, that it's safe as they travel from point A to point B. Now, 526 has been sitting on the table for 20 years. This is not new. 20 years ago, it was actually going to be funded partly as a toll road with an investment by Ross Perot, and that got voted down. But the concept for linking the entire county has been out there for a long time. And it sat at the SIB in this most recent development because the county couldn't get on the same page. And so now it's time to complete that, and I will bring the consistent vote for whatever funds are necessary to get that project accomplished. And then secondarily, as far as roads are concerned, making sure that Johns Island and James Island, Qualey, Kiawah, and Seabrook all have the appropriate means to get our residents around the county. It is very important that we not neglect any particular area at the expense of another. And so I believe I bring a perspective that addresses all of the residents as opposed to just those that make up a particular majority voting block.
Joe, I'll extend.
Yeah, so she brought up the Navy shipyard, and I'm kind of confused as to how my being the sole vote against something which might cost us $100 million is not sound leadership. I would say that I exercise the only sound leadership in that. So the first thing to do is to get rid of that building. We don't need to be spending $100 million on a building, which is still going to leave us with excess space. The other issue is, what could Charleston County do with $100 million? We could do a lot with $100 million. So that's number one. The second is, we need to have a regional development plan. Everybody's been talking about it. It's never happened. Everybody I talked to out front are like, why is this development so unwieldy? And why don't we have the infrastructure? Well, one thing is, we've got multiple jurisdictions, and I was fighting the city of Charleston on James Island. When I was on James Island Town Council for 7 years, I was fighting them there, and I continue to fight them over here. But the city of Charleston, their annexation and development systems have allowed the island just to explode. So instead of talking about a regional development plan, we need to get one. We need to get somebody, one or two people, hire people who know how to do it and do it. We need a regional flood plan, same thing. The county's flood plan is more rigid than the city's. Again, multiple jurisdiction. We've got to have rules, and we've got to have some penalties. And then we have to have regional transportation. Again, bringing people in who've done this, not just, for instance, CARTA is never going to serve our needs. CARTA, for one thing, it's run by either present politicians or ex-politicians. I was on CARTA. And you go to the meetings, and basically it's everybody saying hello and then goodbye. We need to hire somebody who knows what they're doing. We need to get some better transit, including some rail. We need to help these islands figure out a way to get off the island if there is an emergency or a need for evacuation. In the last 7 years, I've probably had 50 people I know from Johns Island call me and say, Joe, please help us over here. I got a cop at the light. I heard from many people on Johns Island, but not the young lady sitting to my left. So if you want something, if you want help, you need to ask for it. You need to call somebody and say, what are you doing? Or can I help you? You can't sit there for 14 years and then come over and complain, frankly. Thank you.
All right. Ron?
All right, thank you. The condition of Johns Island roads, specifically Bohicket, River, Main, and Maybank, are of principal concern to the residents of Kiawah and Seabrook. In 2008, the Post and Courier carried an article reporting on a study prepared by a Washington-based transportation research group called TRIP, which, based on data gathered by the South Carolina Department of Public Safety, showed that both Bohicket and Main, Betsy Kerrison, and River, two of the main routes on Johns Island, were among the most dangerous roads in the state. That was in 2008. With the increase in population, traffic has increased proportionately. The most recent data that I have seen from the Department of Public Safety indicates that over the last 10 years, there was an average of 3 accidents a week on Bohicket Road alone. Just this morning, there was an accident on Main which resulted in a fatality. Accordingly, my first couple of questions will address the topic of roads. You've both touched on the issue of completion of I-526. Joe, notwithstanding your statement, it's my understanding, and if I'm wrong, I'd like to know, that what is holding the project up from SIB's point of view is the failure of the county board to allocate sufficient funds for completion of the road. So my specific question is, if you are elected, will you support the allocation of sufficient funds to complete I-526? And we'll start with Joe.
Okay, well, it's not quite that simple, because we have sent them up proposals that said, this is where our money is going to come from, and they have rejected it twice. And so they're waiting on us to give them another funding proposal. And until I see what that is, which it hasn't been formulated yet, I'm not gonna make a decision on that, because I will tell you that we are very, very far apart. If part of it includes the second half-cent sales tax money, I'm going to say no. If we can do it without that, Mayor, I say yes. The second half-cent sales tax money was allocated and earmarked for specific projects. I-526 not being one of them. And there was a reason why it was not on there. Because Mount Pleasant said, if this is on here, we are going to lobby our people against the referendum, because they had projects including Highway 41 in Mount Pleasant. So it was not on there. I committed, as did the rest of council, not to spend the second half-cent sales tax money on 526. I'm standing firm to that commitment. If we can find money elsewhere, I'm fine with it. We could probably use like the $100 million from the Navy Hospital to put it in.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thank you. The answer is yes. I will use whatever resources are available that we can use to fund the completion of 526. Now, there is obviously the 2017 March publication that was submitted to SIB. That's a matter of public record, and I know Mr. Qualey has a copy as well. And in that, there was $62 million allocated from the first half-cent sales tax. But there was also a presumption that the SIB would contribute its 2012 funds, which was $138 million, which I understand is actually now in contention. So we're not certain whether the SIB will give that additional money or not, which could mean the success of this project. And so I will do whatever is necessary, and I commit to you to finding whatever funding is necessary to meet the match from CHATS, as well as that first half-cent sales tax. And if that comes from funds in the second half-cent sales tax, then so be it. This project is the #1 infrastructure project in the county, according to the Chamber of Commerce. And so I will not let any funding issues stand in the way of that if there are resources available to accomplish that project. Thank you.
Thank you. The county has identified one of the proposed uses of the half-cent sales tax as the, quote, improvement of Main Road from Bees Ferry to Betsy Kerrison. We all know that Main Road extends only to Maybank. Notwithstanding that ambiguity, representatives of the county have repeatedly made the statement. I've got a two-part question. One, what is your understanding of the county's plans for its use of the half-cent sales tax on Bohicket Road? And two, would you support the use of such funds for the implementation of interim safety measures on Bohicket, such as the construction of turn lanes and passing lanes?
I believe I get to go.
Jim.
Okay. So my understanding from the transportation director is that this is a 3-phase project. Part A is the flyover at Main and 17. Those studies are underway, and so they are getting the approval and permitting to get that accomplished with the second half-cent sales tax. Part B begins to address the widening of Bohicket Road from Maybank Highway out to Betsy Kerrison. Now, that won't actually happen until the environmental assessments come along and they get the permitting for that, at which point there is a process whereby they start proposing alternatives. When those alternatives are proposed, it would be my preference to to see the Cross Island Parkway rather than the widening of Bohicket Road for several reasons. I feel like Bohicket Road has a historic corridor that doesn't need to be disturbed, the number of trees that would be impacted, and thirdly, the amount of development on an open access road. Whereas if we use a closed access greenway, then we don't have to worry about left-hand turns being impacted. And according to the chat study, the last one that was done on the Cross Island Expressway and the various alternatives, that said there were up to 244 left-hand turns. That's going to create another scenario for gridlock down Maybank Highway. In the interim, as the mayor asked, if there are safety measures that can be taken, for instance, the left-hand turn at Plowground, where they recently removed some trees that have been hazardous for some time, I would support those efforts. I want our roads to be safe and increase mobility for the people of Kiawah, Seabrook, and Johns Island. And so I did want to take a part of my time to respond to this question to address the issue of when I, as a constituent, reached out to my county council representatives. When I lived on Johns Island, my county council representative was Anna Johnson. And when I had issues with the roads on Johns Island, I called Anna Johnson. I did not call Joe Qualey. And so I have reached out to county council, and I've also been one of the most vocal people back as far as 2016 and earlier on Johns Island United. Whenever there was a backup at the Maybank Light or at River Road, I would get online and say, you know, we need to all call the transportation office and tell them to retime this light. So I have done my part in the community to get out, but this is me getting in the game to make a difference.
Thank you, Jenny.
Okay, so we're talking about the $195 million, which was allocated for the widening and Bohicket. That money just didn't show up. I got that money. That's how it works. You get your elbows sharpened up and you go in there, and when you want something from county council, you got to fight. When I first got on county council, I had to fight Joe Riley, Billy Swales, Keith Summey, and I'm still fighting some of the same people. So people are fighting for this money. I got this money because I saw the need for something to happen from 17 all the way down to wherever it may end up. So it was not done with conclusion or precision, nor were any of the other projects. This was money that said, okay, this is a project. We're going to put this money away, and then we're going to work on it. And that's what we're doing right now, is working on it. It's in the traffic study plans. They're going to have conceptual drawings. They're going to have engineering, and they're going to have public input. And when the public input comes in, everybody can come in and say, we like this, we don't like this. So in the meantime, as I indicated earlier about how I work with the cities or towns, the mayors come to me. I don't come and meddle in y'all's business. If you need something, you come to me. And these two mayors came to me and said, we need some help on these roads, River and Bohicket. And I said, I think we can get some passing lanes rather quickly. A passing lane out here could easily save a life. I was coming out today, and there's areas where there are no trees, and there certainly aren't all grand trees. So we can work on some passing lanes while the process of the widening happens. They came to me, we proposed that, and that is actually underway. The other thing is that nothing lasts forever, as we all know from the last hurricane. A lot of these trees on these roads are not in good health. They may be dead. We need to do a full tree survey and figure out what we're doing with these trees to make sure that somebody doesn't get killed by running into a dead tree, because we saw how when they fell over, they were vacant in the middle. So yes, I'd go for any safety. Turn lanes. We can get passing lanes in quickly, as I told y'all a week after we met.
Great. Thank you, Joe. All right, first question or we'll let Joe address this question first. It appears that everyone generally is supportive and in favor of the flyover at Main and 17. Based on experience we've seen elsewhere, that project will take a minimum of 7 to 8 years to complete. In the meantime, we continue to have flooding issues which block our main artery out of the island in the event of an emergency. Would you support interim measures, including the financing of interim measures, to abate the flooding at that intersection, which is a critical point in our evacuation route? And Joe, I'll let you answer that question first.
You want the short answer?
Yes.
Because the answer is yes. I mean, what a mess that was out there. And yes, I would support whatever we have to do to hold the water back on either side of Main Road. The bigger question is actually, how are we going to deal with all this water which is coming from all this development? I think I answered some of that earlier, but you know, we'll throw our engineers at it, Mayor. We'll put some bulkheads or whatever we have to do to keep it, because this it's not right, and it's certainly not functional to have one way on and off the island. That's it. It shouldn't be that way. And it's our job to ensure that these folks can get on and off all the time safely.
Jenny?
And again, the short answer is yes. My understanding is that part of the phase 1 of the flyover project does include the raising of that area of the road. And so I believe that can be done faster than, of course, it would take to approve the permits for the flyover itself. But that is also part of the discussion in the permitting process for Part A of that improvement project.
Thank you, Jenny. This will be my last question on roads. You both touched on the issue of the Cross Island Greenway or the Cross Island Expressway. I'm asking this question to solicit a yes or no answer and get both of you on the record. So the question is, do you support construction of the Cross Island Expressway extending from Betsy Kerrison to River Betsy Kerrison and River to Maybank, with or without the completion of I-526? It's a yes or no question. Jenny?
Yeah, the answer is yes. I support the Cross Island Parkway because I don't believe that the alternative, once they are finished with that environmental assessment study, is going to prove the wise way to limit development and protect the roadway down Bohicket. And I also believe, based on the chat studies that were done, and they do need to be updated, so based on the data that we have available today, that is the most feasible alternative, and at this time, based on the amount of development in that area and the layouts that has been proposed, that it would impact the least number of properties as well. And so again, if you make that a controlled access road, and folks can get on at the plow ground entrance and be able to get off at Edenvale and then down here at the end of the island, then I believe that would be an appropriate alternative rather than trying to widen all the way down the Bohicket corridor.
Thank you. Joe?
My answer is no. I think if we implement the things that are on the books, including passing lanes and the widening, I think that those will suffice. I think that the process for getting the Cross Island is going to be much more difficult than people think. It was not at County Council. It's not at County Council now. It's with the COG, and the COG has to prioritize their roads, and apparently this road is not very high as a priority, so it's got to get up higher. But I think that if we utilize the 195 million, and then we'd get some turning lanes, and I mean some turning lanes and also some passing lanes, I think that'll suffice. I think it'd be quicker than trying to get the Cross Island. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, thank you. Interestingly, even though we're all Kiawah Seabrook residents, we have a lot of interest on what's going on Johns Island. How Johns Island develops impacts our residents on Kiawah and Seabrook. We all know the island is experiencing really rapid growth, and there seems to be absolutely no consensus about whether it should remain rural or whether it should be allowed to develop. I'm interested, what is in your mind the county's role in planning for and controlling the development of Johns Island, and what personally is your vision for Johns Island? And I think, Joe, this is you first.
Well, I don't think any of us like what's been going on over here, over our shoulder. Like I said, I was fighting high density development before it was cool on James Island, and I actually went to many meetings on Johns Island. The vast majority of what we're seeing over here is in the city of Charleston, over which the county has no jurisdiction. All we can do is go there and try to persuade, which I've gone to hundreds and hundreds of meetings. I spent thousands and thousands of hours trying to do that exactly. Okay? That's where I've been for the last 15 years. Unfortunately, our job is to build the roads, but we're reacting to what is there. So people come up to me and they're like, well, you got to stop this development because they see us building roads, they think that that's our development in the county. It's not. It's the city. We're just responding to it. We are way behind the curve on it. We got to implement regional Charleston County, City of Charleston development plans, flood plans, and we got to have something that sticks, and we got to have some repercussions. But this is why developers have been annexing out of the county into the city. It's been happening for 30 years. The city wants annexations, they want the tax dollars, and they don't really care what happens over here. I've seen it, it's happening. So we got to discourage the developers from just going over there with a handout and getting more than what they asked for. On James Island, the gathering place, which I fought on Maybank Highway, it was zoned single-family residential. The city zoned that unlimited. When I asked the guy, I'm like, what's the density? He said, oh, it's unlimited. I just about fell out my chair. So it went from single-family residential to 1,200 units with no public access for transportation. It's absolutely the worst planning I've ever seen in my life, but they keep on doing it. They keep on doing it. And the Angel Oak, I fought those 800 units, and a lot of folks from Johns Island also joined in on that. But really, that's what you have to do, is you have to be active, you have to be passionate, and you have to get to where you can make a difference on the councils.
So I attended the Johns Island growth meeting a few weeks ago, and these are the issues that came up. And that was a really important and insightful meeting, and everybody representing the area, with the exception of the incumbent here, were present to talk about, including the mayors, to talk about what happens with the future of Johns Island and the Sea Islands that are adjacent. And so my vision for Johns Island is that when we start developing these regional plans, that those include the diversity of what exists. And so where there are rural areas, we need to let those areas remain rural. And where there are areas that have been annexed and that can be more dense, well, those areas are the areas that we need to allow that growth to happen. But it can't just be on and on and on and outside and farther from the urban growth boundary. And so I want to see that development controlled. I do not want it to be simply out of control with multifamily units all over the place as we kind of see right now. But I want to make one point of clarification, which is how much of Johns Island the city has actually annexed. The most recent numbers I saw were less than 20% is in the city, and over 80% is in the county. And so the county has a large role to play in what goes on out here and how it impacts particularly District 9 in the areas of Kiawah and Seabrook. And so I do feel like this is an important area, albeit Johns Island is not within the district that I would represent. It's certainly important as far as accessibility to the islands and constituents I would represent.
Well, my second and last question on Johns Island sort of relates and builds on your answer. Development on Johns Island has gotten ahead of the infrastructure necessary to support it. You've already talked about roads, but what other planning or infrastructure investments are needed? And how do you manage this when there are two different political entities, the county and the city of Charleston, that have jurisdiction? And in your response, would you please address whether you support any specific actions, such as a moratorium on development by either the county, the city, or both, until those investments and improvements can be made? Jenny, I think this is yours first.
Okay, so James Island does have an intergovernmental group that meets. The island mayors are represented on that committee, as well as local representatives. I believe Representative McCoy now chairs it, as well as town of James Island members and PSD members. It is critical that there is intergovernmental participation in decisions that affect all islanders. And so Johns Island needs a similar group. And the growth meeting was an important example of how different people can come together. The mayor of the city of Charleston was there, the mayors of Seabrook and Kiawah, and some of the other representatives who have a stake in these areas. And so I believe it is important that everybody get on the same page and we develop priorities. With respect to the moratorium, I do not favor moratoriums. I believe moratoriums are reaction to failed leadership. When you don't have a plan in place, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, stop everybody. And there are a lot of times when people have invested significant amounts in purchasing property that they anticipated would be able to handle certain developments, whatever the region is, whatever's been permitted and approved. So unless the circumstance is absolutely warranted, I do not support a moratorium under most circumstances.
I think moratoriums are absolutely drastic. I think the only time you should have a moratorium is if you are working in consortium with another jurisdiction and you have a specific goal in mind and it's going to happen. That being said, that ultimate goal is very elusive. To sit here and to be kind of stifled is because I've been doing it for 18 years. I've been dealing with this for 18 years. Intergovernmental group on James Island. I'm on it. I know who comes to the meetings. Okay, I know who participates. I know who doesn't. But yes, that does help. Helps you to identify problems and to potentially complain about them. But the big thing is to solve them. We did an overlay on Folly Road, the city, Folly Beach, and town of James Island. We repositioned the buildings, the heights, things like that. We actually made a huge difference. I'm on the Rethink Folly Road plan. I'm just telling y'all this. I know it doesn't actually affect y'all's lives, but it does matter that we can have something that actually works and functions. But Jenny's right about having to bring everybody together. I think we need I think we need a private either engineering or planning firm who knows what they're doing, who've done this, and we kind of need to push the politicians out of the way. We need to have somebody say, this is what we should do, and y'all go do it with your jurisdictions. Because what's happening now, obviously, is not working, and it continues. It's continuing. If the city has 20% of the island or 30% of the island, they've got 90% of the development. I know what the county's doing on Johns Island, and it's not much. And I would never vote for a rezoning or multifamily on Johns Island.
Thank you, Joe. I've got one last question related to growth, but it's not specific to Johns Island. Kiawah and Seabrook employ hundreds of workers. I've seen statistics that show that we are the Low Country's third largest employer after Boeing and MUSC. We have both contractors and significant employees in the hospitality industry that are finding it increasingly difficult to affordably live in Charleston, in the Charleston area, or travel to or from our communities. What role does the county have, and what possibly can the county do to address this problem? And this will be Joe first.
To address the transportation problems for the workers.
It'd be a combination of either transportation or affordability of housing, or the ability for communities like ours to be able to attract workers.
Well, I mean, this has been going on in Hilton Head for a long time. You know, simply put, I don't agree with subsidizing housing for workers. You know, I think if the business owners, apparently, even the folks downtown, the business owners are doing fine, and they're trying to get their restaurant workers and bar workers in and have them a place to park. I think they should pay them more. I don't think it's the government's job to help supply workers to any private entity.
Jenny?
Yeah, so this is what I would consider sort of a free market issue. We have to let the market bear out the price of housing, which is why we can't turn people away that want to move here. And so when people say, you know, when we have the county at large has bringing big industries here, well, we know that people are going to come for those high-paying tech jobs. And for the island, we know that they have the need for hospitality workers and landscaping crews and construction crews that come from out of town. But those are free market issues that we definitely want to have the ability to build some housing in our areas, and we can't simply restrict that and cut off the housing supply, which is, again, why I would be opposed to moratoriums. But at the same time, it is not government's role to build those houses or to subsidize those houses.
Ron, you have the next group of questions?
Yeah, I'm going to, if I can, change the format a little bit, because this area of questioning deals with record and experience. So I'm going to address separate questions to each of you. Jenny, you have held no elected public office. Given that apparent lack of experience, why do you believe you are qualified for this position?
Well, I'm a wife first and a mother of 3 children. And I'm an attorney. I've been practicing for about almost 14 years. And I have been practicing in the private sector, representing and defending small business owners during that time period. I'm a certified mediator. I've also taught students at both the college and the law school. And I actually bring a new approach and new perspective and new vision to county council. And I believe my lack of a record is actually an advantage in these circumstances. It's certainly appropriate to run on a record, and that is the incumbent's advantage. But from my perspective, I feel like I have developed the reputation and the experience necessary to bring a skill set that is unique and a perspective that is unique to county council, and to be able to build consensus and relationships among county council members to advance and advocate for the interests of the Sea Island communities and those within District 9. That is why I believe I am the appropriate choice at this time.
Thank you, Jenny. Joe, you've been on county council for 8 years. Your Facebook page notes a number of your accomplishments during that period, including most recently that you have secured funds to solve traffic problems at Camp Road and Folly Road. Can you point to 2 or 3 things that you have done over the past 8 years that have directly impacted the residents of Seabrook and Kiawah?
Well, yeah. And again, when the hurricane hit, the mayors called me and said, Joe, our guard gates are going to be empty. Our guards are evacuating. Can you please get deputies down here as soon as they're capable of doing that? And I did that, which gave comfort to the mayors and to the constituents. I participated with a number of other folks in getting the Burden Creek Bridge stopped from being replaced. DOT was going to replace it, and they're just, I mean, like during the worst time of the year. So now they're actually looking to see whether that's necessary. But having that road, it was going to be closed totally. That wasn't appropriate. River in Maybank, and I dealt with both of y'all on this. I got the right-hand turn, which is kind of rutted out. I've got them putting slag in it so that people can use it, so that people aren't just stacked up all the way back, and that will be a dedicated right-hand turn. I fielded a number of calls about the steel plates on Maybank during the construction that were causing traffic to back up way back. I got our folks to basically stop doing that and then to do it at night. So let's say this for a second. I've done everything that I've been asked to do. Again, if the mayors come to me and say, we want your help, I do it. I did it for Folly Beach. Mayor Goodwin, I talked to him about supporting me, if he would support me, and he says, Joe, why in the world would I not support you? You've done everything that I've ever asked you to do for Folly Beach. I feel the same way out here. If I'm asked to do something, I will do it. Y'all's, I think this is circling around maybe to the next question, which is, y'all's disparity of contribution to the county is what makes you sensitive. I agree with that. I totally agree. Y'all put in way more money than y'all get services for. But the model, your model is that you don't need services or ask for services. I am working with the mayor to get a full-time county policeman serving over there at Kiawah at little or no expense. He asked me to do that. That's happening.
Thank you, Jim. Greg,
Did you get your?
I think I went first.
yeah, that's right.
Got it, okay. Well, Joe, I think you actually set up my question. Our two islands have small populations, but they do contribute a great deal of revenue to the county. What would you say to our property owners and businesses that believe that we pay a lot of taxes, but we receive a disproportionately small level of services and attention from the county?
Well, there are two parts to what you just said. Disproportionate services and lack of attention. Those are different. But the first thing, like I said before, is if you want services, if you want something, you have got to ask for it. And there has to be a reason for it. So the culvert down here after the 1,000-year flood by the storage place, that culvert broke. That road was blocked. The mayor called me and said, Joe, can you please do something? Within a half hour, I had our public works people there, putting it back together, making sure that part of the road was passable. If any parts of the roads are impassable, there's a huge problem. So if there's something happening, if there's something that's happening, I need to know about it, and I will address it. I'm always available. These two mayors know that they have never called me, they have never emailed me, that I haven't responded within literally 5 or 10 minutes. Because my job is, what's going on? What can I do to help you? So the model out here is behind the gates. Y'all elected it. It's up to y'all. I'm sorry, but if you want something behind the gates, I will help you get it. I'm trying to help you. Mayor came to me and asked about some more police security. I think that's appropriate. I don't think that the Kiawah should have to pay much money. If anything, I think the county should certainly pay for that. But so these are specific issues that have been brought to my attention, I've dealt with and dealt with successfully. If there's anybody in the audience who has something specific that says, we're not getting this, Joe, I'll be right by the door and y'all can come over and say, I want this.
Jenny?
Again, it goes back to the question of the disproportionate amount collected on the island and what is spent on the island. And this is the fundamental point I want everybody in this room to understand. It does not matter how many votes come from any constituency or where you live or what you pay in taxes. Every single constituent in my district will be represented by me. And that I will respond in any time when somebody needs something to whatever those needs are. And I feel like, for the most part, Kiawah and Seabrook have been left out of the discussion for a long time. And it really goes back to the more global picture, which is infrastructure. The people of Kiawah and Seabrook need a way to get to and from Kiawah and Seabrook. And I am committed to do everything I can to see that they get that access, along with all the other residents of James and Johns Island and West Ashley who need to be able to travel around and get to and from these communities. And so if I am elected to county council, I will make sure that the interests of Seabrook and Kiawah are advocated for at county council.
And I think I have one question left, as does Ron, so we're almost at the end. And again, this builds on the discussion we're having about representation of Kiawah and Seabrook. The council position that you each represent represents not only Kiawah and Seabrook, but also parts of, it includes Folly Beach and parts of James and Johns Island. And both of you are residents of James Island. So how do you, or how will you, ensure that Kiawah and Seabrook's interests are fully understood, considered, and advocated for on county council?
Well,
Jenny, I think this is yours first.
If there is an intergovernmental opportunity like the growth meetings that are starting, I will be a part of those. And so I will make sure that I am listening to the interests of those people that are on this end of the island, even though I am on James Island. But in addition to that, like I've done in the last few months, is I will attend the meetings when I can. And I will look at the minutes when I can so that I know what issues are priority. So I understand that safety is an issue out on Kiawah, and I understand that the coastal environments and erosion and those types of issues they're issues that affect Kiawah and Seabrook but may not affect James Island, and I will be responsive to those issues. And the way to do that is to have open communication, to build relationship and consensus with the leaders of both Kiawah and Seabrook.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, working with the elected representatives. I mean, that's what it's all about. Is you have to have a relationship so that when they come to you and ask you for something, they feel like they're going to get it and get it soon. And that's what I have done the whole time. Having an intergovernmental group is all sounds good if you actually show up and you're there. And I mean, I've been to the intergovernmental meetings on James Island for the last 4 years. I've been there.
Right. Ron?
All right, my final question concerns sea level rise, which is a common concern to all coastal communities. It is of concern, I know, to the residents of Seabrook Island, I'm sure to Kiawah as well. We would note that the city of Charleston has recently undertaken several initiatives with respect to this issue. What role, if any, do you think that Charleston County has with respect to the issue of sea level rise, both with respect to assessing the vulnerability of the Lowcountry and implementing solutions? And Joe, I think you're first.
Okay, well, I mean, if you're talking about Charleston County contributing to some sort of a seawall around the peninsula or the city, I don't think that's appropriate. I think that that we need to deal with development. We need to deal with floodplain regulations. You know, yesterday in the paper they're talking about the city of Charleston having very, very lax floodplain regulations. Charleston County has got very strong floodplain regulations. So it's a matter of are we going to continue to allow the same things to happen which which is bringing more and more water. Again, we've got to have some comprehensive rules, and we have to have some repercussions. Charleston County's done a pretty darn good job in terms of regulations. They're very vigilant with their flood regulations and in their floodplain regulations. So, I'd certainly work with the city of Charleston and whomever else, but as far as contributing towards whatever they were talking about, like the Amsterdam or I don't think so.
Jenny?
Obviously, flooding is a huge issue, particularly out here. And so I do believe it needs to be addressed on some level, but I believe that level is that regional plan level. And I've talked to a group called the Charleston Waterkeepers, if any of you are familiar with those, but they are concerned with the watershed and how we develop around the island to preserve and maintain the natural balance of water infiltration, because paving over everything is what leads to a lot of these water problems, not just the sea level rise, but other sources of water. And so I believe it's really important that what we start to do from a planning standpoint and at the county government level, those in charge of the transportation and regulations in those areas, is to start taking an approach that would incorporate more of the natural environment, that would mimic the natural environment. And we're seeing that in developments like Fox Hall, where they're coming up with new approaches to water retention systems and stormwater management that is much more natural in a way that will help us avoid some of the flooding issues we're seeing. But the county has got to think creatively and out of the box if we're going to be successful at managing this as we continue to grow.
All right.
Great.
Well,
Let me, Craig, just take a second to thank both of you on behalf of the citizens of Seabrook Island. Absolutely appreciate you taking time out and putting yourself through this. I know it's not easy. I would also like to thank all of you for turning out, taking time out of your afternoon to come here this afternoon. I think it's important that we show the candidates that we do care and we have an interest. Thank you very much.
well, I certainly. So with that, we've finished the specific questions. We're now going to give each of the candidates 3 minutes to make any sort of final statement that they would like to make. And I just want to remind you that once that's completed, they will be here for about a half hour or so. And I'm sure there are some questions that you have in your mind that we didn't get to, so that would be a great opportunity to catch them one-on-one and ask that. So 3 minutes, and Jenny, you get to go first.
Again, I want to say thank you to everyone who's come and who's interested in the future of our county. I am, again, a native. I understand what the concerns are out here, and I want to see change. And the interesting thing about how I got involved in this race is I was actually approached by some people who saw the potential in me to possibly bring change to the county. This is not something I sought after. I didn't go to meetings climbing in to try to get up on top of this, be something in somebody in the county government. But when they came to me and they asked me, Jenny, you've got this background, you've been involved in the political process. Would you be willing to do this? Would you be willing to at least provide voters with a choice? I actually sat down and thought about it for a long time, and I have been given a skill set that I am very fortunate to have, and I want to be able to make a difference for the people of Kiawah and Seabrook and James Island and Folly Beach. And so the reason I am running is to give you a choice to be represented and to have your voice heard. And I can promise you that if I'm elected to county council, you will have your voice heard. Thank you.
Joe?
Thank you. I put out a flyer out there. It's a testimonial from Tom O'Rourke, who I think everybody in the room pretty much knows who Tom is. I'm very proud of this, and I'll briefly read it. As a former executive director of Charleston County Park and Recreation Commission, I value my friendship with Councilman Qualey. As you know, Joe will not ever vote to spend money unless he thinks it's needed, fiscal conservative reference. He allowed me to educate him on issues of required spending, and because of that, we have one of the best county park systems in the country. I don't think anyone knows the contribution that Joe Qualey made to the county parks in bringing back Folly Beach when it eroded after the terrible hurricane. Mayor Goodwin asked me to help. I did. We could have lost that park forever. Joe worked behind the scenes with government and conservation groups. Simply put, Joe does what he says he will do. Isn't that the most important quality in someone that you are electing? I started out saying that I'm the can-do and will-do guy. That's the guy. I've been getting things done. I've actually accomplished things. Let me say something else. Nobody approached me 8 years ago. Nobody approached me, no group, and said, we want you to run, Joe. I did it on my own. I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm not beholden to a group of people, unidentified people. The only people I'm beholden to are y'all and the constituents. That's it, okay? So I voted independently. I've made a lot of progress. I have these flyers out here which show specific projects I've done on James Island which have benefited everybody on the island. My experience, my institutional knowledge, my passion is the reason why y'all should vote me back in. Now, let me say something else. I got an email from someone who did contact me about trying to help them out with something. And this was on November 21st of 2017, not that long ago. And it says, Joe, government needs to run as efficiently as private enterprise. It's possible. Look at what the courts have done with electronic filing. I figured if anybody could get the ball rolling, it's you. Let me know what I can do to help. Thanks. Thanks again for all you do for Charleston County. Jenny Honeycutt. It wasn't that long ago, but apparently she wasn't dissatisfied with me in November when she said, thank you, Joe, because I responded to her and I helped her out. Thank you.
All right, again, thank you very much to the candidates. I can't thank you all enough for coming here today. Just again, a couple reminders. One, please stay around and take a couple minutes to talk with the candidates. And also a reminder that the primary is, and Stephanie, I'm looking at you to make sure I get it right, it is on Tuesday, June 12th.